Thank you for joining. Hey, everybody. Welcome to House Connell. Welcome to BBN Bobina's Book Nook, a division of RC Squared, a podcast for the people. You guys, thank you for joining me today. You guys, we are jumping right back into Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. You guys, today we are in part 2, which is 6 ways to make people like you. And then we are in, I guess you would call it principle 3, or the third way is if you don't do this, you are headed for trouble. So today I do have the camera off, you guys. You know, I like hiding behind the camera. I want to get done with this. I thought, well, let me squeeze in some work because I definitely want to head on over to the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, for the Mean Show at 10:30. I believe they're still going to be going live at 10:30. It's a great comic relief. It's usually on Mondays and Wednesdays. You guys can find Este Patil, Mommy 88, and Sean Farash and Mary Kate Delvey. They are a fantastic team. And then the artiste Jacqueline. It's a pretty amazing team, and I really enjoy listening to them. All right, guys. So without further ado, let's jump right in and get this under our belt. You guys remember part 2, 6 ways to make people like you. The first way was taking and showing a genuine interest in other people. And it was titled Do This and You'll Be Welcome Anywhere. And it would only make sense that, you know, if we're showing a genuine interest in someone else, that we would be welcome. All right. And then 2 was a simple way to make a good first impression, and that was with a simple smile. And 3, and also its studies have proved that the smile makes you feel better. And the third way, or part 3, or principle 3, is if you don't do this, you are headed for trouble. So let's see what Mr. Carnegie's words and pearls and nuggets of wisdom are today. I will say I have enjoyed this, and I will reiterate, as I have in my previous content, that we use the Christian Holy Bible as our first OG self-help book. All the answers to everything you could ever want to know is in that book. And this is a nice touch, you know, to read too. I enjoy reading. So let's get after it. 3, if you don't do this, you are headed for trouble. Back in 1898, a tragic thing happened in Rockland County, New York. A child had died. And on this particular day, the neighbors were preparing to go to the funeral. Jim Farley went out to the barn to hitch up his horse. The ground was covered with snow. The air was cold and snappy. The horse hadn't been exercised for days. And as he was led out to the watering trough, he wheeled playfully, kicked both his heels high in the air, and killed Jim Farley. Wow. Okay, what a way to start this one. So the little village of Stony Point had 2 funerals that week instead of 1. Jim Farley left behind a widow and 3 boys and a few $100s in insurance. His oldest boy and namesake, Jim, was 10 years old, and he went to work in a brickyard hauling sand and pouring it into the molds and turning the brick on edge to be dried by the sun. Jim the younger never had a chance to get much education, but with his natural geniality, he had a flair for making people like him, so he went into politics. And as the years went by, he developed an uncanny ability for remembering people's names. And I will say that is important. We should always want to know other people's names. All right. And when did we get out of introducing ourselves, you know, by our full names? He never saw the inside of a high school, but before he was 46 year old, but before he was 46 years old, 4 colleges had honored him with degrees, and he had become chairman of the Democratic National Committee and Postmaster General of the United States. I once interviewed Jim Farley and asked him the secret of his success. He said, hard work. And I said, don't be funny. He then asked me what I thought was the reason for his success. I replied, I understand you can call 10,000 people by their first names. No, you are wrong, he said. I can call 50,000 people by their first names. Huh. Okay. I wonder how many of that 50,000 would have the same first name is my first question. All right. Make no mistake about it. That ability helped Mr. Farley put Franklin D. Roosevelt in the White House when he managed Roosevelt's campaign in 1932. Hmm, didn't know that. During the years that Jim Farley traveled as a salesman for a gypsum company, and during the year, sorry guys, forgive me. I'm trying to work on my timing. And I usually have a unique advantage as I've read the book before. Usually it goes smoother. I have not read this book yet, and that's not an excuse. So, you guys, please forgive me and bear with me. During the years that Jim Farley traveled as a salesman for a gypsum company, and during the years that he held office as town clerk in Stony Point, he built up a system for remembering names. That's funny. I came across a YouTube channel talking about retaining information that we read and learning. All right, let's go. During the years that Jim Farley traveled as a salesman for a gypsum company, and during the years that he held office as town clerk in Stony Point, he built up a system for remembering names. In the beginning, it was a very simple one. Whenever he met a new acquaintance, he found out their complete name and some facts about their family, business, and political opinions. He fixed all these facts well in mind as part of the picture. And the next time he met that person, even if it was a year later, he was able to shake hands, inquire after the family, and ask about the hollyhocks in the backyard. No wonder he developed a following. For months before Roosevelt's campaign for president began, Jim Farley wrote hundreds of letters a day to people all over the western and northwestern states. Then he hopped on a train and in 19 days covered 20 states and 12,000 miles, traveling by buggy, train, automobile, and boat. He would drop into a town, meet his people at lunch or breakfast, tea or dinner, and give them a quote heart to heart talk. And give them a heart to heart talk. And the heart to heart is in quotes, like air quotes. Then he would dash off again on the next leg of his journey. So that's pretty exciting. I want to talk about something for a second. And I know there's nobody in the room, and that's okay. I don't know if that magic eye tells the truth or not. I got to say, I'm pretty disappointed. I'm disappointed in the things that I'm seeing, and it's almost, I wouldn't say making me want to quit, making me not want to be a part of. I really jumped into this podcasting world, and I've met some amazing people. Some of the other, some of the bigger content creators, podcasters out there. I mean, I just really question some things like, why do you need 500 subscription plans and you're already a millionaire? Like, I'm not mad at somebody for making money, and I know that it takes money to make money. It just, I don't understand. And why are people paying it? Like, what are you really getting out of it? Right? I'm not going to drop any names right now. I'm just going to wait and see if they come across my feed again, because I got to say, I don't even know what to say about it, but it just seems to me like people just want to give their money away and be taken advantage of. And that's cool with me if that's what you want to do. I just can't comfortably live with it. I recently came across a content creator, and she's gotten pretty big, and she's worked with some people. She's done a lot of whiny stuff, and I love her to death. She's the whole reason I started podcasting. What I don't understand is, why aren't you pulling from your community? Why aren't you pulling from the people who are sewing into you? But that's not what you're doing. You started Blexit and now you left it. I mean, does anybody stay in anything to watch it grow and keep it growing? No, you gave up on it, is what it sounds like to me. And now you just want to take money from other people. Well, you know what? If they want to give it, that's on them. I'm so disgusted by it. I'm so disgusted by it. And then you sit up there and you talk about, you berate other people, even though they're far left extremists, and you talk about they don't know anything about being, living amongst the common people. But how long have you really known anything about living amongst common people? Because the way I see it is, you lived a pretty normal life, but don't act like that you're on our level. Please don't do that. Please don't act like you identify with us. And especially when you're begging people to take your money, to give money to you to all these different subscription plans. You've got a new website coming in January 15th. Why are you spreading people everywhere? And then another thing, why are you taking sponsorship from a finance company that's encouraging people to take out second mortgages on their home to pay off credit card debt? That's a horrible plan. It's disgusting to me. And I'll call it out every time I see it. I'll probably never be heard, and that's okay. Man, people, get it together, please. As soon as he arrived back east, he wrote to one person in each town he had visited, asking for a list of all the guests to whom he had talked. So I wonder, big content creators, all of you, the ones that you're asking for money from your community, are you reaching back out to them? Are you? Just because you're rolling a super chat in the window, is that to tease people to get them to pay you more money? And then you elevate people like Alex Jones and hold a fundraiser for him? Why? Did you do your full research? And then I hear another content creator, oh, I make 200 videos a day, so I don't really have time. So then you're asking people to trust you and your resources. Well, where are you getting your information from? If you have your head down making 200 videos a day, what are you really consuming to hash back out to your people? I don't know. I don't know, but I've never been so uninspired by what I see. It's disgusting to me. I started this because I thought we would build a community. I thought that people wanted to be connected, but I don't think that people want to be connected. I truly don't. I think that people want to fearmonger. I think they want to find a reason to be separated, and they just want to throw money at problems. Well, guess what? That's about to all be dried up. When are you going to wake up and see that? I would never dream of getting a subscription plan or anything unless I had something solid to offer my community. What are you offering your community? And community, what are you getting out of it? You do it for a reason. I wish people would stop lying to themselves. Let's keep this going so I can catch the mean show. I need a dose of mean today. Let's keep going. The final list contained thousands and thousands of names, yet each person on that list was paid the subtle flattery of getting a personal letter from James Farley. These letters began, Dear Jane or Dear Bill, and they were always signed Jim. Jim Farley discovered early in life that the average person is more interested in his or her own name than in all other names on earth put together. So I guess, we fall for it. We want to see our name across the screen, and it is a good feeling. Remember that name and call it easily. And you have paid a subtle and very effective compliment. And let me tell you another thing I can't stand to see. I cannot stand to see. I did a whole content on a podcasting etiquette, and I know with my two little views, what do I know? I will say this. There is podcasting etiquette. If you are going to use someone else's content, right, even as to promote them, whatever, please remember their name. If a brother or sister donates into your cause or sends you some money, please remember their name. It's really not that hard to remember a content creator's name or take the extra few seconds to maybe look it up. I'm a little disappointed. And I see a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? I see a lot of hypocrisy within the people calling people hypocrites. And this is on the right. This is from content creators that have been known to call out other people for doing stuff. And look, they're doing the very same things themselves. You reek of greed. And I'm sick of it. Jim Farley discovered early in, well, we already read that. But forget it or misspell it, and you have placed yourself at a sharp disadvantage. And I would agree with that. I would agree with that. We should, Vivek Ramaswamy covered this not too long ago, that it is important to honor the enunciation and pronunciation of someone's name. So, Candace Owens, I'm going to call you out. When you reported on Amala, her name is Amala, not Amala. She says it in her videos. I know she probably doesn't think it's a big deal. You should remember to enunciate and pronounce people's names respectfully and the correct way. If you are teaching people how to, you know, be classy and all that, uh, do better, Candace Owens. Do better. Her name is Amala. All right, let me keep going. And I love you, girl. I do. I'm just a little disappointed right now because I don't know who you are. One minute you're crying that you're being attacked, then you're telling us how much you're promising us things, then you're shoving a book called Chaos down our throats, and then you're exalting the Snake King, Alex Jones. And I'll say it to his face. Shame on you, Candace Owens. Shame on you. I do love you. Get your house in order, my lady. Get your house in order because you're going to have so many things going on. You're going to leave your community behind. So, are you doing it for you or are you truly doing it for your community? Are you looking for gotcha moments all the time? I'm not sure. And why do we feed off of that? It's disgusting. Remember that name and call it easily. And you have paid a subtle and very effective compliment. But forget it or misspell it, and you have placed yourself at a sharp disadvantage. For example, I once organized a public speaking course in Paris and sent form letters to all the American residents in the city. French typists with apparently little knowledge of English filled in the names, and naturally, they made blunders. One man, the manager of a large American bank in Paris, wrote me a scathing rebuke because his name had been misspelled. I don't know if I would have taken it to that extreme, but you can certainly understand how someone we don't even take the time to enunciate someone's name the right way. We don't even take the time to find out who sent us a bit of information that we come across. Man, disrespectful. We have forgotten how to respect people, I think. Sometimes it is difficult to remember a name, particularly if it is hard to pronounce. Rather than even try to learn it, many people ignore it or call the person by an easy nickname. Yep, I will attest and affirm to that. I will. My father hated my nickname Gina, but I understood why that I was given it because he had a sister. He has a sister named Regina, and she would have never been called Big Regina or Old Regina, and she was beautiful, so I don't blame her. So they called me Gina and called her Regina. Well, I have stepped into my name, and my father only ever called me Regina anyway. He never called me Gina. He hated the name Gina. I think he might have called me Gina once. All right, let's keep going. For some time, Sid Levy called on a customer whose name was Nicodemus Papadopoulos. Most people just called him Nick. Levi told us, I made a special effort to say his name over several times to myself before I made my call. When I greeted him by his full name, good afternoon, Mr. Nicodemus Papadopoulos, he was shocked. For what seemed forever, there was no reply for him. Finally, with tears rolling down his cheeks, he said, quote, Mr. Levy, in all the 15 years I have been in this country, nobody has ever made the effort to call me by my right name. I understand you, Mr. Ramaswamy. I do, Vivek, and it's Vivek, you guys. And Candace Owens, it's Amala, not Amala. It is the little things, you guys, and you think that it's not. But see, they want to twist your mind and make you think that it's about bigger things. I know that was touching. What was the reason for Andrew Carnegie's success? He was called the Steel King, yet he himself knew little about the manufacture of steel. He had hundreds of people working for him who knew far more about steel than he did, but he knew how to handle people. And that is what made him as rich as Midas. Early in life, he showed a flair for organization, a genius for leadership. By the time he was 10, he too had discovered the astounding importance that people place on their own name. Yeah, I've heard people get really upset about it, and you can understand why. And he used this discovery to win cooperation to illustrate. When he was a boy back in Scotland, he got hold of a rabbit, a mother rabbit. Presto! He soon had a whole nest of little rabbits and nothing to feed them. But he had a brilliant idea. He told the boys and girls in the neighborhood that if they would go out and pull enough clover and dandelions to feed the rabbits, he would name the bunnies in their honor. Oh, that is so smart. That is so smart. What an incentive. All right, let's keep going. Now, I will ask you a question. Oh, wait. The plan worked like magic, and Carnegie never forgot it. Years later, he made millions by using the same psychology in business. For example, he wanted to sell steel rails to the Pennsylvania Railroad. J. Edgar Thomason J. Edgar Thompson was the president of the Pennsylvania Railroad then. So Carnegie built a huge steel mill in Pittsburgh and called it the Edgar Thompson Steel Works. Now, I will ask you a question. When the Pennsylvania Railroad needed steel rails, where do you suppose J. Edgar Thompson bought them? When Carnegie and George Pullman were battling each other for supremacy in the railroad sleeping car business, the Steel King again remembered the lesson of the rabbits. The Central Transportation Company, which Carnegie controlled, was fighting with the company that Pullman owned. Both were struggling to get the sleeping car business of the Union Pacific Railroad bucking each other, slashing prices, and destroying all chance of profit. Both Carnegie and Pullman had gone to New York to see the board of directors of the Union Pacific. Meeting one evening in the St. Nicholas Hotel, Carnegie said, "Good evening, Mr. Pullman. Aren't we making a couple of fools of ourselves?" "What do you mean?" Pullman demanded. Then Carnegie expressed what he had on his mind, a merger of their two interests. And why not? Why not? Why aren't more people working together? He pictured in glowing terms the mutual advantages of working with instead of against each other. Pullman listened attentively, but he was not wholly convinced. Finally, he asked, "What would you call the new company?" And Carnegie replied promptly, "Why, the Pullman Palace Car Company, of course." Pullman's face brightened. "Come into my room," he said. "Let's talk it over." That talk made industrial history. This policy of remembering and honoring the names of his friends and business associates was one of the secrets of Andrew Carnegie's leadership. He was proud of the fact that he could call many of his factory workers by their first names. And I will say that it has been reported that Donald J. Trump visits his properties frequently, as does his family. Let's keep going. People are so proud of their first name. People are so proud of their names that they strive to perpetuate them at any cost. Even even blustering old P.T. Barnum, the greatest showman of his time, disappointed because he had no one to carry on his name, offered his grandson, C.H. Seeley, $25,000 if he would call himself, quote, Barnum, quote, end quote, Seeley. For many centuries, nobles and magnates supported artists, musicians, and authors so that their creative works would be dedicated to them. Libraries and museums owe their richest collections to people who cannot bear to think that their names might perish from the memory of the human race. Yeah. Yeah. The New York Public Library has its Astor and Lenox collections. The Metropolitan Museum perpetuates the names of Benjamin Altman and J.P. Morgan. And nearly every church is beautified by stained glass windows commemorating the names of their donors. Many of the buildings on the campuses of most universities bear the names of donors who contributed large sums of money for the honor. Most people don't remember names for the simple reason that they don't take the time and energy necessary to concentrate and repeat and fix names indelibly in their minds. They make excuses for themselves. They are too busy. They don't have time. Well, guess what? Make the time. This "I don't have time" is just an excuse and it should not do anymore. I don't think I hear Donald Trump saying he doesn't have the time. I don't think I've heard any of them say they don't have the time. Why are we saying it? Did Jesus ever say he didn't have the time? I don't think so. You guys join us tonight. We are cracking open Genesis 1:1. I do apologize for last night. We were supposed to go live. And I really got in front of the camera because I haven't really been feeling it lately, and I'm not sure this is really even the track I should be going down. I'll stick it out though, because we have invested a lot of time and money into it. I just have to figure out what my motives are. And I've always known what they are. So let's continue on. Mm. They make excuses for themselves. They are too busy. But they are probably no busier than Franklin D. Roosevelt, and he took time to remember and recall even the names of mechanics with whom he came into contact. To illustrate, the Chrysler organization built a special car for Mr. Roosevelt, who could not use a standard car because his legs were paralyzed. W.F. Chamberlain and a mechanic delivered it to the White House. I have in front of me a letter from Mr. Chamberlain relating his experiences. Quote, I taught President Roosevelt how to handle a car with a lot of unusual gadgets, Mr. Chamberlain wrote, but he taught me a lot about the fine art of handling people. When I called at the White House, the president was extremely pleasant and cheerful. He called me by my name. He called me by name. Made me feel very comfortable and particularly impressed me with the fact that he was vitally interested in things I had to show him and tell him. The car was so designed that it could be operated entirely by hand. A crowd gathered around to look at the car, and he remarked, It's marvelous. All you have to do is touch a button and it moves, and you can drive it without effort. I think it is grand. I don't know what makes it go. I'd love to have the time to tear it down and see how it works. When Roosevelt's friends and associates admired the machine, he said in their presence, Mr. Chamberlain, I appreciate all the time and effort you have spent in developing this car. It is a mighty fine job. He admired the radiator, the special rear vision mirror and clock, the special spotlight, the kind of upholstery, the sitting position of the driver's seat, the special suitcases in the trunk with his monogram on each suitcase. Man, this guy thought Mr. Chamberlain thought of everything, didn't he? In other words, he took notice of every detail to which he knew I had given considerable thought. He made a point of bringing these various pieces of equipment to the attention of Mrs. Roosevelt, Miss Perkins, the Secretary of Labor, and his secretary. He even brought the old White House porter into the picture by saying, George, you want to take particularly good care of the suitcases. When the driving lesson was finished, the president turned to me and said, Well, Mr. Chamberlain, I have been keeping the Federal Reserve Board waiting 30 minutes. I guess I had better get back to work. I had brought a mechanic with me to the White House. He was introduced to Roosevelt when he arrived. He didn't talk to the president, and Roosevelt heard his name only once. He was a shy chap, and he kept in the background. But before leaving us, The president looked for the mechanic, shook his hand, called him by name, and thanked him for coming to Washington. You guys, we must get back to this. We must get back to this. Let's honor each other. What is so wrong with that? All right, let's keep going. And there was nothing perfunctory about his thanks. He meant what he said. I could feel it. A few days after returning to New York, I got an autographed photograph of President Roosevelt and a little note of thanks, again expressing his appreciation for my assistance. How he found time to do it is a mystery to me. So, yes, I do acknowledge that everyone's busy. Franklin D. Roosevelt knew that one of the simplest, most obvious, and most important ways of gaining goodwill was by remembering names and making people feel important. Yet, how many of us do it? Half the time we are introduced to a stranger, we chat a few minutes and can't even remember his or her name by the time we say goodbye. One of the first lessons a politician learns is this: to recall a voter's name is statesmanship, to forget it is oblivion. Mhm. And the ability to remember names is almost as important in business and social contacts as it is in politics. Napoleon III, Emperor of France, Napoleon III, Emperor of France, and nephew of the great Napoleon, boasted that in spite of all his royal duties, he could remember the name of every person he met. His technique? Simple. If he didn't hear the name distinctly, he said, "So sorry, I didn't get the name clearly." Then, if it was an unusual name, he would say, "How is it spelled?" I do the same thing. I always want to spell people's names correctly. It's always been a pet peeve of mine. During the conversation, he took the trouble to repeat the name several times and tried to associate it in his mind with the person's features, expression, and general appearance. As soon as his Royal Highness was alone, he wrote the name down on a piece of paper, looked at it, concentrated on it, fixed it securely in his mind, and then tore up the paper. In this way, he gained an eye impression of the name as well as an ear impression. Makes sense. I'm gonna try that out. All this takes all this takes time, but quote, good manners, said Emerson, are made up of petty sacrifices. Yep. The importance of remembering and using names is not just the prerogative of kings and corporate executives, it works for all of us. Mr. Ken Nottingham, an employee of General Motors in Indiana, usually had lunch at the company cafeteria. He noticed that the woman who worked behind the counter always had a scowl on her face. She had been making sandwiches for about 2 hours, and to her, I was just another sandwich. I told her what I wanted. She weighed out the ham on a little scale, then gave me one leaf of lettuce, a few potato chips, and handed them to me. The next day, I went through the same line. Same woman, same scowl. The only difference was I noticed her name tag. I smiled and said, "Hello, Eunice," and then told her what I wanted. Well, she forgot the scale, piled on the ham, gave me 3 leaves of lettuce, and heaped on the potato chips until they fell off the plate. Aw, she probably never got noticed. We should be aware of the magic, and that is italicized, and we know through reading that means put emphasis on it. We should be aware of the magic contained in a name and realize that this single item is wholly owned by the person with whom we are dealing and nobody else. That's right, our names are individual to us and nobody else owns them. The name sets the individual apart. It makes him or her unique among all others. The information we are imparting or the request we are making takes on a special importance when we approach the situation with the name of the individual. Yes, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. From the waiter to the executive, the name will work magic as we deal with others. Principle three. Principle three. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. All right, guys, thank you. I've enjoyed it. Peace out. We'll see you on the next one.